James Carville, who always has a thing or two to say about what's going on, decided that he was going to go on a rant about what you should and shouldn't say. And it's always telling when the guy who clearly looks like he belongs on a porch with a shotgun saying, "Get off my lawn," in the bayou, if you will. Mr. Carville has a few things to say regarding the current circumstances with the poll numbers being down, with the enthusiasm being down, a lot to think about. So here we go.
Why don't you tear his face off and talk about...
First of all, the fact that he's got some shit on the bottom of his lip really says a lot. The guy probably was just out home eating a sandwich and thinking, I'm gonna go on and make a live and tell people exactly what I think, because they ain't smart enough to think for themselves. With all due respect, when your accent sounds like this, it certainly doesn't give a lot of confidence that you really know what you're talking about. So we'll continue.
And you've already fought. No one would know it, but you keep it a secret. You're for raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. You know what? It's a really good idea. You know why it's a really good idea? Because it doesn't cost jobs.
So why did the President of the United States say that? The parliamentarian says I can't afford to do it, man. And you're coming out now, almost 4 years after the fact, that of all the issues that the president was supposedly going to push through, which in retrospect was probably the easiest one based on the trajectory, how it would have been implemented and so on, was the $15 minimum wage, and you couldn't even get that. So now you want to wax poetic about it's a really good idea. If it was such a good idea, why didn't the president actually fight for it? There are more pressing issues that I think he should have fought for, particularly the PRO Act, but needless to say, that could have been done, and it wasn't. So hindsight's always 20/20, and trying to scare people into this idea that, oh yeah, you definitely want that $15 minimum wage. Yeah, you weren't saying that when he basically threw the parliamentarian under the bus to say, yeah, you can't afford this. Where the hell were you then, Carville?
They have economists that have looked at this every way you can. And when you raise the minimum wage and say, well, it's only X people get the minimum wage. Yes, but there's X million people that get 20% above the minimum wage. And if you raise it, it'll go up. Oh, that's not a new idea, James. That's, Democratic populism. Mark Penn is not going to like that. Well, who gives a shit what Mark Penn likes or doesn't like? Try it on a poll. Try it on a poll.
I'm sorry, with that piece of food hanging off the end of his chin, it's almost as bad as trying to identify which direction George Latimer is looking in when he's talking to you. Sorry, I had to go there. I had to go there. Had to do it. That's funny, Andrew. I don't know. He may very well be what he eats, although maybe there would be a little bit more blood. I don't know. But we'll continue.
And I'm going to tell you something else. That Mark Penn is not going to like, or we got to understand these people, James. We got to balance. Oh no, you don't. So next year, the Trump tax cuts are coming to be renewed because they want 10-year budget projections or some bullshit. It's just all bullshit they don't even tell you about. We're not going to do it on incomes over $400,000 a year. And we're going to take that money and we're going to put it into something that helps young people. Because the generational thievery that has occurred in this country is criminality of the first order.
So if that's the case, and I will give him just a small amount of credit. For those of you who don't know who Mark Penn is, he is one of the Clintons' biggest political lackeys, especially for Hillary. Mark Penn is definitely one of the true swamp dwellers of American politics. But as the saying goes, it does take one to know one, so it's unsurprising that he would go there. We'll continue.
And we keep wondering why these young people aren't coming home to the Democrats, why blacks are not coming home to the Democrats.
You don't support a living wage. You don't support universal health care. You do not support a clean environment, which is clean air and water. You support endless war, and you support a genocide. All those things before the genocide was reason to say, this is not a party worth supporting because it doesn't support working people. You have directly influenced the course of action regarding inflation. When you talk about the Trump tax cuts, we can go back to look at the Bush tax cuts, which Obama made permanent. And now you can look at the Trump tax cuts, which Biden made permanent. So does it really matter who passes it if the person who has the chance to undo them doesn't undo them? The gap between the rich and poor grows ever larger. The fever pitch of anger is only going to get worse. And as I said, I'm not even addressing the genocide. That's a completely separate issue, but it's going to get better.
Because Democratic messaging is full of shit. That's why. And talk about cost of living. And we're going to help deal with this. And don't talk about fucking Gaza and student loans. That's so out. The Harvard, that guy Della Volpe is pretty good.
Don't talk about Gaza, guys. It's not going to help us get votes. Just pretend like the genocide isn't happening. That's the key. Pretend like it's not happening, and then they'll vote for us. Oh, it's not really a genocide. It's just a conflict. It's complicated. You don't really understand. You're just a bunch of kids. Understand that you cannot afford to own a home, that you cannot afford healthy food, that you cannot have clean drinking water, and your air is contaminated. But don't you talk about that Gaza. That's how we're going to win. Just don't talk about it. Look at the rage in his Cajun face, and with that little bit of food dangling from his chin. I'm telling you, it's like he just. Now you listen here, young whippersnapper. I'm going to tell you a thing or two about how things are done down yonder where we're from. Oh Lord, got just a little bit more. We'll finish it out.
15 issues. You know what the number 14 and 15 issue were total? Student debt in Gaza.
How many people that are, let's say, millennial or Gen Z actually do political polls? Now, the idea that you don't think that Gaza is a make or break issue in this political environment, you have to be a moron. Now, granted, for example, down in South Florida, where Jen is running against DWS, is Gaza going to be the number one issue for people living in the district? Probably not. It might not be the top 5, but it's a very important issue that can decide if you're on the side of genocide, I can't be on your side, so I'll be on the other side. It helps when the candidate in question is infinitely better on all of the substantial issues that matter to the person who's running for office. For example, Jen supports a living wage. Debbie doesn't. Jen supports universal health care. Debbie doesn't. Jen supports a clean environment. You want to call it the Green New Deal? Fine. Jen supports a clean environment. Debbie doesn't. Jen is not funded by corporate special interests. Debbie is. Jen supports ending insider trading. Debbie doesn't. Jen supports ending endless war and overt spending on endless war and genocide. Debbie is one of AIPAC's most successful foot soldiers. I can keep going down the list, but you get my point. It's easy enough to say that on these levels, for example, that the issue of Gaza and student debt for the average voter is not at the top of the list. That's fair, because it isn't something that necessarily directly affects them on a day-to-day basis. But to suggest that it isn't a consequential issue that is going to have significant ramifications on this election and many elections to come, because the Democratic Party has been kind of staring into the abyss for the longest time, and they're finally going to sink into it for many reasons, not the least of which is the current presidential nominee, who they think is going to beat Donald Trump in the fall. Now, at this point, I don't know if they really think he's going to win. But trying to convince people that they have to vote your way simply because you're trying to scare the ever-living shit out of them, most people have hit bottom. They don't care.